am 79 years old, and I feel ashamed as I tell you what you're about to hear. For 40 years I was an easy woman, the kind of woman people felt comfortable around, the one who never objected, who carried everyone's problems and burdens, the no trouble woman. You know the type, the woman who says, "I'll take care of it," when everyone else stays silent in a meeting, who sets the table at home without anyone asking, who smiles and says yes to everything instead of setting boundaries in relationships. Does this sound familiar to you? When I was young, I thought this was a good thing. I believed that if I was a good girl, I would be loved and valued. That's what my mother taught. Teachers applauded me for it. Neighbors praised me for being so well behaved, and I became addicted to that praise, because back then praise was easier to get than love. When I was 30, I was standing in the kitchen one Saturday morning. The smell of coffee filled the air. My husband had opened the newspaper, and the children were watching cartoons in the living room. I was cooking breakfast with one hand and clearing last night's dishes with the other, and the only sentence running through my mind was, "I won't upset anyone today." Pay attention, not, "I will make them happy." It was, "I won't upset them." That one sentence governed my life. Then the years blurred together. At work, I took on extra overtime because everyone knew I would say, "I'll do it." In my family, I stayed quiet so there wouldn't be arguments, always saying, "Let's not make a big deal out of it." When my friend was moving, I carried the boxes because I was the one saying, "Don't break it," and "Don't tire yourself out." My husband's mother found something to criticize every time she visited. She'd say, "You should have done this too," and I would renew the tea again because it would be rude not to. And each time a piece of me broke off, it felt like I was drifting further away from my true self. If you recognize yourself in what I've described, or if you know someone like this, please like this video right now, because stories like this reach someone's heart at exactly the right time. And leave a comment. I read them all, and believe me, you are not. But the real price, I didn't understand it until much later. Being easy didn't just make life easier for others, it made me easy to forget, because someone with no boundaries eventually gets treated like an unlimited resource. No matter how much you give, it's never enough. And over time, you begin to feel ashamed, and you grow cold toward yourself because you aren't enough. I'm going to tell you this story from my own life. For now, just know this: I'm not here to blame anyone. My mistake was shrinking myself to be loved. And today, at 79, I can finally admit the truth. I wasn't easy. I was afraid. My fear often looked like shame. Sometimes it was fear of abandonment. Sometimes it was simply a heart that couldn't handle silence. Because what I learned as a child was this: if you raise your voice, you won't be loved. If you object, you'll be alone. So I chose to be good. In other words, I chose to be invisible. I made my first big decision at the age of 32. My boss said, "But you take care of this project. We're more comfortable with you." They were comfortable with me because I didn't set boundaries. I accepted whatever was placed on my shoulders. That night, after the children went to sleep, I sat down at the computer. My husband said, "You can rest tomorrow." I smiled. Inside, I thought, I never rest. And for years, I truly didn't. And it was the same at home. I carried everyone's emotions. I swallowed my words to avoid arguments. I pushed aside my own feelings so no one else's would be disturbed. In the next video, we'll talk about why a 74-year-old woman stopped explaining her no and what she does instead. Don't miss that one, because a single sentence can change the balance of your entire life. Now I ask you, would you like me to tell you about the day I said my first real no? Who it upset and how it set me free? The first time I said a real no was I still remember it like it was yesterday. I was 46. At work, I had been juggling tasks for weeks. At home, I had my mother's hospital appointments and the children's school rush. My body wasn't just tired, it was exhausted from constantly managing. My boss walked into my office. His tone was familiar. "You'll need to come in over the weekend. I know you can handle it." He knew me well enough to know I wouldn't say no, so he dumped it on me again. The old me would have smiled immediately. I would have said, "Sure," sounding polite on the outside while falling apart on the inside. But that day, only one sentence came out of my mouth. "No, I can't come in this weekend." Even I was surprised. There was a moment of silence. Then my manager's face changed. "What do you mean you can't come in? Everyone is making sacrifices," he said. My heart started racing, and right then, that reflex I'd lived with for years kicked in. Explain yourself. List your reasons. My mom is sick. The kids. I'm tired. Try to look justified in the other person's, but I didn't do it. Because for the first time I understood something. I don't have to provide proof for my boundary. I looked him in the eye and said the same thing again. This weekend is not possible. That's when all hell broke loose. That day I was difficult. They said that you've changed. They said you've become selfish. One of my friends even came up to me at lunch and said, "You weren't like this before. We loved you." When I heard that, something inside me snapped, because what they really meant was, it used to be easier to use you. Yes, I felt guilty on the way home, but at the same time, I felt something else, a strange kind of freedom. It was as if I'd opened a window I'd kept tightly shut for years. I didn't go to work that weekend. The world didn't end. The project still moved forward. Someone else came in. Someone else solved it. Life went on without me. That no freed me because it taught me this. What I lost when I set boundaries was never truly mine to begin with. I only lost a role, the role of the woman who can do everything. And beneath that role, I finally began to find myself. Now, let me tell you what changed in my family and marriage after that no, who became more uncomfortable and who actually began to respect me more. Because the real test began at home. At work, they call you tough and move on. But at home, people who have known you in one mold for years can treat your change like a personal threat. My husband was the first to notice. I got up early on Saturday morning, made my coffee, but didn't set the breakfast table like I used to. I sat down. He looked up from the newspaper. "Is something wrong?" "No." "Then what about breakfast?" "I made it for myself. You can make your own if you want." Look, it wasn't meant to start a fight. My voice was calm. My face was neutral. But a heavy silence fell over the house, as if a plate had shattered, because my ease had been mistaken for the order of the home. I had been the hidden engine keeping everything running. And when that engine paused, everyone noticed. At first, they thought something must be wrong with me, but they couldn't name it, because they weren't used to this version of me. Over the years, I had trained them without even realizing it. Then the small reactions started. You weren't like this before. I heard that from my husband, from my children, and from my mother-in-law, as if it were a crime to change, to protect yourself, to admit you can't keep up. The atmosphere at home changed because their mother was no longer smiling while drowning. My husband, he was the... At first he tested me. Come on, you take care of this. You call about this. You solve this. And each time I stayed polite but firm. I can't do it today. That's your responsibility. Let's plan this together, but I can't take it on alone. And I realize something important. When I don't explain, the arguments decrease. When you explain, the other person finds space to bargain. They start with "but" and try to pull you back. A clear boundary closes the door to negotiation. Now let me explain how I dealt with the emptiness that rose inside me when I gave up the role of the easy woman. Because freedom can feel lonely at first, and that loneliness can be the biggest trap. I know that trap very well. In the first months of setting boundaries, I felt like a guest, even in my own home. Everyone was doing their own thing, and no one was revolving around me anymore. That sounds good, doesn't it? Oh, no one is burdening me now, but there was another voice inside me. No one needs you anymore. That voice was dangerous, because for years I lived as if being needed and being loved were the same thing. When they called me, when they asked me for something, when they gave me a task, I felt valuable. When I began setting boundaries, those calls decreased, those requests decreased, and for a moment, I believed my value had decreased too. One evening, I was sitting on the couch. The house was quiet. My husband was in another room. The children had grown up and disappeared into their own worlds, and one sentence kept looping in my mind. So I'm not really important to anyone. And in that moment, I realized this thought could push me right back into being easy, because people will sacrifice themselves again just to escape loneliness. That night I asked myself a different question for the first time. Not who loves me, but who do I love? What do I love? It was a simple question, but I'd never asked it until I was 46, because my life had been filled with other people's needs, not my own. I bought a small notebook. At the top of the page, I wrote 3 things. Drink coffee in silence in the morning. Go for a walk. Finish the old book I left half read. Maybe that sounds small, maybe even funny, but for me, it was revolutionary, because for the first time, I was imagining my life separate from what other people wanted from me. Did the loneliness fade? Yes, it did, but on one condition. I didn't fill that space with other people again. I filled it with myself. I walked. I breathed. I slowed down. When someone called, I didn't instantly say sure anymore. First, I asked myself, do I want to do this? And if I didn't, I declined politely, without explanation, and I ended the call. After a while, I noticed something else. People got used to my boundaries because they had to. When you are clear, the world adapts to your new self. But when you hesitate in fear, everyone tries to push you back into your old mold. And most importantly, part of what I thought was loneliness wasn't loneliness at all. It was grief. I was mourning my old self. As the easy woman role disappeared, it left a void behind. That void hurt, but it also made room. Now at 79, let me tell you where I am today, what I gained when I stopped being easy, which sentence I made my motto, and a small but powerful boundary practice you can use. First, I gained self-respect, And that's the kind of thing that doesn't get applause. No one says, "Well done, you chose yourself to." But when you lay your head on the pillow at night, that little voice inside you stops blaming you. For years, I tried to silence that voice by pleasing everyone, but it didn't disappear. It only grew louder. And ask yourself one question: do I really want this? If you don't, choose one of these phrases and use it without explaining. "I'm not available today. I can't do that. No, thank you." It really is that simple. No defense, no proof, no long story, because doing something you don't want to do is not up for debate. If you think this practice could help you, like the video, then come back after you try it and tell me in the comments how it felt and whether it worked. These videos get stronger as they reach women living similar lives. Also, write in the comments which phrase you would choose. "I'm not available today. I can't do that." Or, "No, thank you." And subscribe, because in the next video we'll talk about exactly that. Remember, the channel's next video is titled "Stop Explaining Your No." There, we'll show you how to respond to the pressure that comes after saying no, and how to stay clear with a single sentence. If you saw a piece of yourself in today's story, you shouldn't miss that video. So at 79, I can say this: being easy wore me out, but setting boundaries brought me back. And I wish I'd known this in my 30s, but now you know. And that knowledge can change a woman's tomorrow. Thank you for listening to this story. Now it's your turn. What no will you say for yourself today?